Welcome to the She Found Motherhood podcast. We are doctors Sarah and Alicia, maternity physicians and moms who have been through it all. We want to empower you with knowledge so you can have the best pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience you can.
She Found Health and She Found Motherhood is meant for general medical information only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This information does not apply to every situation. If you have questions or if you've received different advice, please contact your healthcare provider. Always seek the advice of your physician or another qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The views expressed by She Found Health and She Found Motherhood and our guests are not representative of any of the institutions with which we are affiliated. Some of our podcast episodes are sponsored so that we can keep getting great info out there to you, our listeners. We only partner with companies that we truly believe in. Some of our links and suggestions may be affiliates, and we would appreciate you using them to help fund this important work. Now let's get to it.
Hello, Catie. Welcome to the She Found Motherhood podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you for volunteering to share your birth story. I love doing these podcasts and I love hearing about people's birth experiences.
That's good. I am excited to share. We went to a mom and baby group yesterday and it was our first one. So we all shared our birth stories. So it was some good practice.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. I think it's important to share. And I think as someone who has also had 3 births, I just love telling the story.
Definitely listen to birth stories too while pregnant.
Yeah, totally. Right. And I think it helps a lot of people too. So I'm really excited you're here. Now, before we started recording, you told me you have 3 beautiful children.
That's true.
And we can talk about every birth, even though I know that the first birth is probably a blur.
Sure is.
Yeah. So do you want to start telling us a little bit about that pregnancy and what the pregnancy and the birth were like?
For sure. So I'm going to set the scene that in November of 2013, I was not well. And I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes then. So I was 20. Oh gosh, it's bad that I don't even know how old I was. I want to say I was, well, nope, it's not. I can't even do the math. Anyway, so I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes then. And so that was in November. And then we've been like getting close to knowing it was going to be time to start trying to get pregnant in the ish future. And so I went to see, I wasn't being followed by an endocrinologist then. I was just being followed by like an internist.
Yeah.
Okay. Doctor. He was a nice guy. And so I asked in January, is this something that can happen soon? And he was like, yeah, totally. Everything looks good. You have at her. So with our daughter, I think we tried to get pregnant for about 5 months, which like at the time felt like forever because you're like, I should just get pregnant immediately.
Yeah.
And like read the Taking Charge of Your Fertility book and every single book in the London Public Library on how to get pregnant.
Yeah.
But luckily it really didn't take too long. So I got pregnant with her in the summer of 2014. Yes. So it was a fairly uneventful pregnancy. I had some bleeding early on and went to the like early pregnancy assessment unit. And it was actually a student who was doing the ultrasound and they couldn't find the baby. And then the OB who was there that day, who actually happened to be my OB and is very lovely, found the baby. So like you go from crying in great sadness to crying in great joy.
Yes.
Very quickly. But I had to see a high risk OB because of type 1 diabetes. And she was as lovely as people come. And the sort of only caveat to the whole thing was that they like to induce, she said, around 38 weeks.
Yeah.
Placental aging and all of those fun type things. So I was convinced that I was not going to need to be induced because all the babies in my family came early. I think I was about 5.5 weeks early. My brother was 3 weeks early. My grandma was early. My mother was early. I was never going to be induced.
Yeah.
And so lo and behold, at 38 weeks, I was in fact induced. And so this was my first time being induced, obviously, and my first time being pregnant and my first year of having diabetes. And so I was just like, yeah, hook me up to the insulin drip. Like we are good to go. And so we went in at 8 in the morning and they started, I think they broke my water around 10 in the morning. And I just hung out in the bed. And in retrospect, should have done some other things than just sitting endlessly because she was stuck looking out the window.
Oh, yeah. So like transverse. Yeah. OT.
I don't know. Sure.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
just kept telling me she was looking out the window. And so eventually, I think after 11 hours, I got an epidural with her. And because induced contractions are pretty mean.
They're very intense. Yes.
But I wasn't having a fun time. And so once I got the epidural, I think it was like 7 times that they tried to manually rotate her to
Wow.
try and get her.
Looking.
There's a lot of hands that
Yeah.
did a lot of things, but she did not want to come. So it took a good long time, but eventually once I think with her, I pushed for 3.5 hours.
A good push.
And after the first 2 hours, they made me take a nap. So it's like I pushed for 2 hours and they're like, maybe you should try and rest up and we'll try again. And so then took a nap and tried again.
Yeah.
And they still didn't come. And so they decided they were going to try and vacuum her out. And the vacuum did not work. It popped off her head. But the very nice doctor, who was also pregnant, just looked me right in the eyes and she was like, Catie, I have decided this is the way your baby is going to come. Can I just pull it out? I was like, yes, you can. Please, by this point,
Yeah.
we've destroyed this path. Please just take the baby out.
Yes. Yeah.
And because there had been the vacuum and all of that, there was like the NICU people waiting and 1,000 students. I don't really know. I think there was like 11 people staring at me.
Yeah.
And
Like a birthday party.
my husband was so stressed. And like people kept saying to me that I had a really good epidural. I was like, that's great news. And my husband was just like this, like poor little deer in headlights.
Totally.
But they pulled out my very chunky baby girl and put her right on my chest. Like she was completely fine, but she was 8:15. But she was also my like learning about diabetes baby. She had to make her way through. But yeah, all of her blood sugars were good. And she was just like chubby little screaming baby.
Oh my God.
So yeah, everything was great. And I was so cocky because the doctor came to see me after and they were just like, I don't know who asks people this 3 hours after they've had a baby. They're like, when do you think you're going to have another baby? I was like, by this point, I had like 3rd-degree tearing. They'd like, you're all stitched up. And I was like, 2 years from today, I'm going to have my kids exactly 2 years apart. Like, I figured out how to get pregnant. I know exactly what to do. And that is not what happened. Not at all. I guess that's mostly her story.
My only other question is how was postpartum and infant feeding and all that stuff?
Totally. So nursing Marnie was the single hardest thing I've done in my entire life.
Oh.
She had a really bad lip and tongue tie. And so her palate was really high.
Oh,
And so I cried nursing her probably for 6 months.
oh, Katie.
So she would flick my nipple off the roof of her mouth.
Yeah. Oh,
I had Raynaud's phenomenon in my nipple.
oh, yeah.
And I ended up with leaky pipe syndrome. So then she would spit up blood.
Yeah.
So the first time she spit up blood, she was like 3 weeks old. And we took her to emerge because what else do you do when your infant is spitting up blood? Like you assume it's coming from inside of her.
Yeah.
And I remember like driving to the hospital and I was like, 3 weeks is not all we get with this baby. Like convinced, right? That
Your brain goes to the worst.
always. But other than that, it was wonderful. We went to a lot of play groups. Like I had really good lactation support people, which is probably why I nursed her until after my son was born. So for just over 3 years.
Good for you.
Like a crazy lady, just endlessly nursing. But yeah, we made it through. It was unpleasant for a long time. And she's 6.5 and still doesn't sleep through the night. So we were just like tired and confused and sore, but we were fine. We were fine. I know. It was maybe insanity. Like I felt like it was the one thing I could do to stop her from getting diabetes, which isn't necessarily true, but it's like it's in your head. And I've read like all of the very long, like 30-page research things about it. And what I understand more is that it's actually beneficial to still be nursing when you're introducing gluten and dairy to them than actually to nurse endlessly. But anyway,
But that's okay.
yeah, it's not like it's bad for them.
Other benefits. Exactly.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was long and hard, but lovely.
Good. And now tell us about baby number 2, which is a boy.
Right. Yes. So our second is as a boy, and I was like so sure that I was just gonna get pregnant like the first or second month that we tried, and it was gonna be no big deal. So we would have started trying, I think it was June, May or June, and I couldn't tell. Oh, I can't tell you the year. I can just add 2. No, add 1. Nope, I can't do math today. Anyway,
No
just
judgment.
shortly, I'm a kindergarten teacher. Like our math is pretty like low key. Very good with the number 10.
Yeah.
It would have been like shortly after she turned 1. And because I was nursing partly, I'm sure, like my period still hadn't come back. And I was like looking into all of that. So like looking into like the window in the nighttime when like nursing was most related to your prolactin. And anyway, like things
A
got
lot of research. Yeah.
yep. So I was trying all of those things. And so the 13th month that we were trying for our second, I got pregnant, and a week later was not pregnant anymore. Um, and I was just like unlucky month 13, like not very happy. But it was June, end of school, focus was elsewhere. And luckily, the next month, I got pregnant with Reed. And I actually had a friend at school who had also been trying to get pregnant. And I just had it in my mind that whenever we both got pregnant, like those were the babies that we were going to have. And they are, in fact, 10 days apart. So it all worked out. But with him, it was my best pregnancy for sure. I was, first of all, just like very happy to be pregnant. Like I had gotten a little bit better. And I know there's people who try and get pregnant for years, and like my heart genuinely breaks for them because I felt completely insane at 14 months of trying to get pregnant,
Yeah.
and just so happy not to be trying to get pregnant. That feeling horrible was fine. I did take diclofenac with him because you can't just sleep away feeling sick when you have a toddler.
No.
Oh, it was very unfortunate because that was my strategy with Marnie, was just to like sleep with ice packs in dark rooms.
Yeah.
And yeah, it wasn't an available option. I'm trying to think. With him, I did see like a chiropractor and an osteopath more often because I had become wildly obsessed with fetal positioning.
After your prolonged, yeah, I can understand
Yeah.
why. After all that,
I was like, this is what's going to happen. Oh, you're okay. We'll talk about you next. So yes, we went to an osteopath, and Reed had been stuck in the exact same position that Marnie was, like its butt under my, here, you can do this.
buddy.
See, these are the things that they edit out.
Maybe
You don't-
we'll leave it in for
Yes.
for
The
you know, real life IRL.
It's true. It is true. There we go. He should be happy now. Yeah, no, so I went to the osteopath, and she was like a little bit of a funky osteopath. And I asked her what she was doing, and she told me that she was talking to my sac of fluids.
Oh,
And then she's like, okay, Catie, now your baby's going to move. And it was the first time he moved out of that position. Like, I kid you not. I like went to prenatal yoga that night, and I was like, guys, I saw a witch doctor today. And he moved my baby. And I would just kept like pushing the spot where I was used to having a baby's butt. And it was like, never went back. Like, it was amazing.
that chat really helped.
Whatever was happening with my sac of fluids, we were good to go. And so things just progressed from there, and we were still aiming for 38 weeks. And so I had my induction date. I think it was for the 12th of March. And with Marnie, I'd been called like right at 8 a.m. So I just assumed that that's like how that happened. It's like my husband took the day off work. Like we took Marnie to daycare, and we're just like hanging out waiting. Oh, wait, no, I have to go back. There was a flu going around.
Oh,
And my husband, sweet husband, had gotten the flu and had slept in the basement for an entire week. He went and he got his chest x-rayed because he was convinced he had pneumonia. Like he was dying. And then the next week I got that flu,
oh no.
and I spent one day in bed. And then So I would have been at like 36 weeks. And then at 37, I felt like I had popped my rib out or broken my rib. It was horrific. I ended up in triage and they were like giving me morphine and they did an x-ray to see if I'd broken my ribs and I hadn't. So I went home and 2 days later I got a call from my OB to call her back and I had pneumonia, which they had found
On your chest X-ray.
on my chest x-ray from trying to look at my ribs.
Oh my gosh.
So it was the Wednesday. So I was supposed to be induced on the Monday and it was the Wednesday before. And she was like, I am just going to prescribe you like crazy antibiotics because we want you healthy by the time you deliver this baby. You don't want to have pneumonia when you have a newborn. And I was like, yes, this is important. So she put me on 2 different kinds of antibiotics. And I finished them like the day before he was born, I think. Yes. So that was a special time.
Yeah.
Of course, my husband thinks he has pneumonia.
I love. And then you get it. And I know.
I actually have pneumonia. Anyway.
We'll leave that where it is. Because we all know.
Oh, I remind him about it like monthly. I think still. It's just like, oh, do you remember when you lived in the basement? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. And I took care of the toddler and grew.
Yes. I was gesting a human and who actually was ill? This person. Anyway, it's all good. So I was expecting we'd get called like pretty early on the Monday and we did not. And at about 10 p.m., I called triage to just be like, hey guys, is there a time at which you stop calling? I don't know. Yeah. And she was like, nope, we will call at any time in the night. Just make sure your phone volume's on, try and go to sleep, whatever. So I was like, okay. So I get myself all into bed and I'm like imagining the words of my prenatal yoga teacher, like telling me to relax my body. She's like the sweetest woman and had the most calming voice. And I'm just relaxed. And at 11:03 p.m., they called. So whatever, we got in, we were like, drove to the hospital. We lived very close. And I think we got there around like 1 a.m. It
was looking after your daughter.
Okay, because we knew I was supposed to be induced. Yeah. My parents had picked her up from daycare that day.
Perfect.
Yeah, my parents live in London too. And it was actually really sweet because my in-laws had come down and were staying with my parents.
Oh.
So yeah. So like my daughter had like all of her grandparents just like doting on her.
So cute.
So yeah, it was lovely, really lovely for her, I think. And so once we got into our room with our super lovely nurse, whose name was Addie, and I adored her, there was some sort of emergency, so they couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So we just hung out for 2.5 hours to do something. And so around like 3:30, I think, maybe 3, they came and broke my water. And the deal that I had made with the EndoPreg team this time was that I was not going to be hooked up to insulin. Everyone's job was to pretend I did not have diabetes and that I was just going to manage everything.
Because you're like at it by now, right?
Yes. So I had signed stuff that like if I became unconscious or unable to do stuff that they could hook me up. And I agreed to have the port type thing, whatever.
Oh,
IV that was just like waiting to be hooked up to insulin.
Like saline locked. Yeah.
Sure. That sounds great. So I was like, I will be ready for you to do that to me, but I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Because when I was having Marnie, they let me eat a popsicle, but did not let me have insulin. And then they were upset that my blood sugar was high. And I was like, you just fed me frozen sugar. Anyway, it's all good. We live and learn. And because I wasn't hooked up to anything, they let us go walk around the hospital. So we walked around the hospital after they broke my water from 3 to 4 and then came back and they did a little check on the babe. And then we walked again from 4 to 5. And so they started Pitocin at 5:30 in the morning.
And were you contracting at all after they broke your water?
Like crampy.
Yeah.
Like while I was walking, it was like you could feel the cramp cause like the little gush of fluid, but like nothing too crazy. No.
Yeah.
And so we walked around the hospital. We had a great time. We came back and we were watching Friends because what else do you watch or do while you're in labor? And
we watched stuff too.
Yeah. With my daughter, we actually watched, even though she was born in April, like my favorite movie is The Santa Claus. So that's literally what we watched. Tim Allen in The Santa Claus. Anyway, so we watched Friends and everything was fine. And then at 7, they had to switch nurses. And we were very sad because we loved Addie. And she's, don't worry, like I have handpicked your nurse. Like this person is amazing. And I didn't want to have an epidural, which like, I did with Marnie, and it was 100% the best choice I could have ever made.
Yeah.
Didn't want to do it again,
Okay.
which is also fine. And she was like, she has 2 kids and she had them both like without an epidural. Like, you are going to love her. And her name was Leah, and she was also phenomenal.
Yay.
And she fully just held my hands as I pleaded with her to end this all. And she was like, if you really want me to, that's what we'll do. But you told me you wanted to do this, and I'm going to help you do this. Like, she was so good.
Yeah.
And so around, we switched nurses at 7. I guess things got pretty real around 8:30. And at 9, I was like, Leah, I had pneumonia and they put me on really strong antibiotics and I have to poop. This is my problem. And she's, oh no, honey, that means you're going to have your baby. And I was like, I don't think you understand.
Yeah.
I am on 2 very strong antibiotics. Like, I am promising you, I just need to use the washroom. And she's, okay, I will let you go to the bathroom with you. Just let me check you first. And we haven't, I don't think they checked me at all.
Yeah.
Other than when they broke my water. And so whatever, hop up on the bed and she's, no, honey, you're going to have your baby. This is what's going to happen. You're ready. And I was like, no, because it took so long with our first.
Yeah.
It was 5:30 in the morning, like when we actually started the Pitocin, and it was 9. Like, I expected this to take substantially longer.
Yeah.
And so I also pushed for a really long time with Marnie. And by the time we got everything like ready to go, I pushed for 8 minutes. So
I good after 3.5 hours.
my beautifully positioned baby, I was like, I couldn't, like, it didn't even like process that it was real.
So great.
It was so great, except that I had to have stitches without an epidural, and I did not enjoy that.
No.
Did not enjoy that. Luckily then, because it wasn't COVID, we were allowed to use the laughing gas.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so I had,
And you need to put freezing in, obviously.
yes. And so then it was all good.
Yeah.
It wasn't my favorite. It was not my favorite, but yeah, it was just great. Like, we were, the only other thing that was interesting about him is that he has a solo kidney.
Oh.
So at the anatomy scan, he had a normal kidney and a tiny kidney with no blood flow. And like, I got to see all the like trees of blood flow. And so the kidney had disappeared. So they just like to check that he was all good, and he passed his blood sugar screenings, and we were, like out of there in just over 24 hours.
I presume breastfeeding was a lot smoother this time. Is that right?
Okay. He was also severely lip-tied, but I aggressively shoot milk into the mouths of my children. And so he was a very fat baby. So he was actually 8'3" when he was born. He was smaller than Marnie, but he gained weight very quickly. Like, at 6 months, he was 6 pounds heavier than Marnie was at 6 months. So when I took him for his assessment, because it was really painful to nurse him, they didn't believe me that he was lip-tied or tongue-tied because he had gained.
Because he was gaining so well. Yeah.
And then they looked in his mouth and they watched him try and nurse, and he couldn't suck. And they were like, oh, you must just shoot milk into your children. That is an accurate description of what happens in our home. But yeah, he was good. Like, we went to a mom and baby group like when he was exactly a week old, and like just like out in the world and loving life. And my daughter was still in daycare.
Oh, it's so nice because then you can actually enjoy some of the.
Yeah. So we left her, he was born in March. We left her in daycare till the end of June. And then my husband is a teacher as well. So then he was home for 2 months. So by the time I was like solo with the kids, he was like 6 months old. Right.
Yeah.
That's more mat leave than lots of people in the world get.
Yeah. Yeah. We're very lucky.
Yeah. So then our original life plan was that he was going to be our last child.
Yeah.
And I worked really hard to be okay with that. And I failed really miserably. I sold our baby clothes. I sold my maternity clothes. Like, I was trying really hard, and I was just like, I would listen to birth stories and try not to cry because I was never going to give birth again. Like, it was just silly. I'm like, it's better for the environment if I have fewer kids. It's better financially if I have fewer kids. Tried to be okay with it. And then last summer, I was like going for a walk down my street, and I was like, okay, if we don't have a baby, like if I don't get pregnant by the end of the summer, I will be okay with it.
Yeah.
Like, I will just be fine with it. And it was probably like a week later that I found out I was pregnant. I was like, okay. It took my husband some processing because we were not necessarily trying versus not trying. It was like it's like a possibility and not a promise.
Yeah.
And took him a little while to process it. And I was just like jazzed because it was like the answer that I needed more than I realized I needed it. Like, it's like, oh, okay, this is actually what I really did need and want. And I feel great about this.
Yeah.
So I spent the summer being like horrifically sick, and he spent the summer caring for our 2 children. And then it was COVID.
Yeah.
And so I teach kindergarten. He was usually teaches grade 3. That year he was doing library because the librarian was doing online schooling. And our school board bumped back the kids' start time by 2 weeks to try and get all of the procedures in place.
Yeah.
So the first week of school, we had 3 PD days. And on the second PD day, I woke up and I had some spotting. And I was like, oh, it's a little weird to have some spotting. I think I was about 10 weeks pregnant then. And so I texted my principal and I was like, I'm just going to go to urgent care. Like, I just need to know that everything's fine. Like, I'm sure it's fine. And so they have very bad ultrasounds in urgent care. And so the doctor there did an ultrasound and he was, well, like, I can see a baby. I'm not sure if there's a flicker because I can see flickers other places. And I was like, that is not 10 weeks of baby. Like, I've seen 10 weeks of baby. And then they took my blood work to do like the HCG and it was low. Then I was like, well, like hormones can be funny and eventually they start to drop. I actually, on your Instagram page in one of the ask us things was like, is it normal for this to drop this early?
Yeah.
And one of you lovely humans did answer me that it was on the low side. These things can happen. And so then I went to school that afternoon because what else do you do? I did buy an obscene amount of butter tarts and took them with me like on the way.
Yeah.
And so in Ontario, in kindergarten, we have a teacher and then an early childhood educator. And so my teaching partner was just like a lovely human being. And she had lost a baby in between, I don't know if it's in between her first and second or her second and third. Like, and the girl next door had an ectopic pregnant. Like, anyway, so I was like surrounded by all of these like very loving people. And honestly, I think of my close friends, most of them have had one, if not 2 miscarriages. So it's like, very, very well surrounded by loving people. And, you know, everyone's like, it'll be fine. Like, it's going to be great. It's like, okay, we'll see.
Hey, Sarah, do you know what I've never asked you? Did you take a prenatal course when you were pregnant?
We did. Even though I'm a maternity care provider, my husband and I thought it would be an important process for us to go through together.
That's so cute. It must have been so hard for you guys to coordinate your busy schedules, though.
Oh, tell me about it. I was a medical resident at the time, and he was working full-time. We really struggled to find a course that would fit our needs and ended up doing a semi-private course that still was challenging to schedule and quite expensive.
Wouldn't it have been nice for you guys to have access to an online course with evidence-based content that you could do from the comfort of your own home or on your own time at your own pace?
You're telling me if I had had access to something like our Pregnancy to Parenthood prenatal masterclass, it would have been a game changer.
And that's the big reason we put this course together, to provide parents with access to reliable, comprehensive prenatal education from the comfort of their own homes and the ability to watch it and rewatch it when and where they choose.
Plus, it's got so much great information about preparing for the 4th trimester, which I'll admit, I felt really unprepared for. We focus so much on labor and birth when we're pregnant without understanding how challenging breastfeeding in the 4th trimester can be.
I hear ya. And that's why we put together such a comprehensive module all about what to expect for the 4th trimester and for your newborn.
If any of you listeners are pregnant and thinking about a prenatal course, I may be biased, but I would 100% recommend our online course. Head on over to www.shefoundhealth.ca/masterclass to check it out.
We promise you won't be disappointed or your money back.
So I had an appointment with early pregnancy assessment unit the next week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went when I would have been almost 11 weeks pregnant. Went, and as I expected, there was no baby. Well, it was a very small baby. So miscarriage, I think it would have stopped growing around 7 weeks. And so the tricky thing is That was a Thursday. No, Friday. I can't remember. The dates are not important.
Yeah.
It will get slightly more important. But the kids were supposed to start school on the Monday.
Yeah.
And so they're like, do you just want to wait and see? And I was like, no, under no circumstances can I just wait and see. I don't want to be in the middle of the first week of kindergarten.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, you're miscarrying a baby. And anyway, so it must have been a Wednesday because they agreed that I could come back on the Friday and we would just make sure that everything was following the expected path.
Yeah.
So went on the Friday and they agreed that they would give me the
Medication?
yes. Thank you. I was like, please say the name of it.
Yeah. That's a,
Did. Thanks
Yeah.
for reading my face. So they gave me a prescription for that and they wanted me to do it 3 days in a row. So the plan was that I was going to do it Friday night and then bump it up a little bit to do Saturday midday, Sunday midday, and then start kindergarten on the Monday. This was the plan.
yeah.
So I went to fill the prescription and no doctor had signed the prescription. And so I could not get the medication. So
Oh.
I had to go into, luckily, because the early pregnancy assessment unit is also part of the fertility clinic. And because fertility clinics are at the whim of women's fertility cycles, they were open on the Saturday.
Hmm.
And so I went and they found me someone to fill the prescription. And so in the end, I had to take it on Saturday, Sunday, and then after school on the first day of school. And I don't recommend that, but it was also like, it's a pandemic. And I was like, these people are trusting us with their kids for the first time ever in a school in a pandemic. Like, I need to be there. It was unpleasant, but again, like, totally survivable. I will say, at some point in my life, I think when I was like 18 or 19, I was diagnosed with PCOS. And I'd always had really heavy periods, which I think actually made a miscarriage much more survivable because it doesn't feel as aggressive or something. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so we were in this limbo because my husband wasn't as thrilled as he thought he might be with a third child. So we weren't sure what was going to happen. But I was like, no, like, I've obviously decided this is what has to happen. And so I like went to see a naturopath and had aggressively low, like, my ferritin levels have always been really low. I think they were about a 4 then.
Wow.
And not great. So I like took, honestly, got my like cycles like as like amazing as they had ever been and got my ferritin up to like 20, which is the highest it's been in my adult life. Like, I was like, we are making this happen. So I think he was our 3rd month trying. So I was like a crazy lady. I think I probably took, I would conservatively say 30 pregnancy tests.
Yeah.
And I had them like all lined up, send pictures to my friends, only some friends. Not everybody wants to see your endless pregnancy tests, but like, everybody needs a friend who can confirm for you that line is getting darker.
Yes.
And so my doctor was good and sent me for like a dating scan and like right around 7 weeks when the baby would have stopped growing like the last time. So I could see that it was all going well. But the unfortunate thing was that she was going on mat leave. And so we were followed by a walk-in clinic doctor who was kind but interesting. And yeah, I didn't love that. And because of COVID, the OBs were seeing us starting later than usual. I don't know if that's happening for you guys, but originally my OB wasn't going to see me until 28 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, that is a long time to see the doctor who can't look at my chart and remember that he's seen me before. And I just want to, and especially when you're feeling like a little bit nervous that things are not going to go the way that you hope they will. But I don't know. I have no idea why. But at some point, I got a phone call and they were like, oh, no, she wants to see you before that. So I was like, okay, thank goodness. And everything was just going as it should. My like blood sugars were great. My like claim to fame in my second pregnancy was that I got my A1C lower than my dad's. Diabetes, like I got it down to 5.3.
That's
But
Impressive. That's
I know. This time I only ever hit 5.4, so I didn't have that anyway. But it was lovely. Like I wasn't having anything flagged in my blood work. And when I had my like growth scan with him, I think he was in like the 30 to 40th percentile. And I was like, I am absolutely killing it. But I did not believe that I was going to have a baby. Like absolutely did not. And I don't know if it's because I'd had a miscarriage or because I don't know. Like I just couldn't. And even if I talked to friends, they were like, you like genuinely, like if you were to talk to me about it, it was like in a way, like I did not think there was going to be a baby at the end of this. Like there just wasn't. We were going to have 2 kids and that was it, despite the fact that I was like very clearly pregnant. And I was super excited because I was convinced with Reed that if I'd had like 3 more days, I would have gone into labor. Like I was just,
Yeah.
I was sure. And so I had read all of the like guidelines, like the NIC anyway. Right. As I say, I will read all of the like studies and stuff. And so my OB, I said to her, was like, how late? Everything going perfectly. How late would you let me go? And she was like, if you really didn't want to be induced at 38 weeks, I would let you go to 39. Like everything looking fine, 39. And I was like, sold. This is what I want to happen. And she's like, how about like 38 weeks? We'll do stretch and sweeps. I'll do as many as you want. We will just try and get you going to labor if that's what you really want. So I was like, yes, that is exactly what I want. I am going into labor this time. And she was, why don't you want to be induced? I was like, I want to see what it's like to go into labor. I wanted to see what it was like to have contractions that were not like medically induced contractions. And I wanted to labor at home partially because of COVID.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Oh. And so she's like, okay, if that's what you want, I am on board. Everything looks good. And then on leading up to Thanksgiving weekend, I had 2 nights where my blood sugars tanked. Like 6 hours in the low 2s, like nothing, not pleasant.
Yeah.
Like
You must have felt
like
awful.
you get used to it, but it's not pleasant. Yeah. And I ate a lot of candy. And so on the Saturday morning, I called triage and I was like, hey, this is what's happening. Should I come in? And she's like, I think that's a good idea. We'll just check the baby out. Like, I'm sure everything will be fine. We'll just like check.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got there at 9 and they did a non-stress test and everything looked great. And so they're like, we just want to check your fluid. Perfect. So that was at 9. They didn't manage to do an ultrasound to check my fluid until 12:30.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked fine. And then, so you're like, just like hanging out. And then the resident came in and she was like, the doctor wants to induce you right now. And I was like, oh, okay. He said, they're just not comfortable. Like, we can't see your placenta. We can't make sure that it's not
Pooping out.
right. Like, you don't know until the placenta's there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want to at least go home. I want to have a shower. I want to get my stuff. Let me collect my husband, who was at Thanksgiving with my like dad's side of the family and the kids, because we thought we had like another week to go before anything was going to happen. And so the doctor agreed that I could go home, and they were like 1 to 2 hours max. Sure, I can do that. Go home, like power shower, throw all of the like last minute things in a bag. And we got back to the hospital at 3 or 3:30, in and around there, and waited in the waiting room for an hour. And a very nice nurse came and got us. And she was like, it is so busy. I'm going to put you in an antenatal room. Sure. So we've in an antenatal room. And I was like, can I just have a yoga ball to sit on instead of the very uncomfortable bed? And so they went and they got me a yoga ball, like these very sweet nurses. And then it was so busy, they forgot about us and forgot to bring us food. We were there until 9:30 at night.
Gosh.
And so I said to the nurses, I was like, I want to go home. Nothing is happening. They didn't monitor the baby while we were there, like nothing.
He was moving fine and all that stuff.
Yeah. And so I was like, I want to go home. And so they're like, okay, we'll get the doctor. So the doctor came in, and like the nurses had warned me that he was a very cautious doctor. Like they kept just like, they're like, there's doctors who are a little more comfortable with things. And then there are very cautious doctors. He is a very cautious doctor. So we came in and I was just like, I want to go home and do this. Call us in when you're ready. But like, we're just sitting here doing nothing. I would like to do that at home. And he was like, oh, I'm worried about stillbirth. And I was like, I can explain to you my understanding of stillbirth. Like I can explain to you the differences in the rates for diabetics versus non-diabetics. Like I have read them. I understand what a 3-fold increase is. I still know how minute the chances are. And he's like, I'm worried about your placenta. And I was like, I will call an ambulance to bring me here if I think there's anything wrong. And then maybe I was not being the most polite, but I said to him, I was like, I understand that you have delivered a lot of babies, but you have never had a baby. And this is going to go a lot better if I just have some sleep. And he was like, okay, you can go home. And so it's like, oh, I'm not a confrontational person. But I was like, if I'm just going to sit in an uncomfortable bed overnight, like I'm going to be a wreck to try and birth a baby.
And if they weren't monitoring you at all, I
No.
understand where you were coming from.
Yeah. So they did a non-stress test before we went home and everything was perfect. And then right as we were pulling into our driveway, I get a phone call and it's a nurse. And it's no, this is a lovely conversation. She was like, Catie, how would you feel if I just told you I wasn't going to call you till 6 a.m? What if I told you I will call somebody else before you? I will not call you before 6 o'clock and you will go to sleep as soon as you are home and you will sleep until I call you. I was like, you are my favorite person. That is exactly what we need to happen. And we agreed to that, came inside. I went to the bathroom and lost my mucus plug. And I was like, okay, you know what? Like my body and the world, we are all on board with what's happening. This is great. So then went to bed and our son usually wakes up at 4 a.m. So I just woke up at 4 a.m. anyway. And at 5:55, the nurse called and I'm just like, good morning. She's like, why are you so cheery? And I was like, I have been awake for a while. And she's like, can you be here in an hour? And we're like, yes, we can be. Like, this is perfect. And so we got there just after 7, which is also a great time to start because you start with a nurse. They start.
Yeah.
And our nurse, because it was Thanksgiving Sunday, was wearing a Sanderson sister shirt that said, I smell children.
Oh.
And she's, I hope that's not offensive. I think it's funny. And I'm like, it is very funny. This is perfect. And so she didn't have the orders to not have me hooked up to insulin, but found them.
Okay, good nurse.
So all was well. And they broke my water at 9. And so they're like, okay, go for a walk. And they said I could walk for up to 4 hours, coming back every hour. So we walked around the hospital for an hour and it was like dead quiet because it was Thanksgiving Sunday. Came back and then they're like, you guys can walk outside too. It was so nice. It was like 25 or 28 degrees.
Thing.
And so they're like, you don't have to stay in the hospital. If you want to go for a walk outside, go for a walk outside. So we just wandered through the neighborhood and all the trees, leaves were changing colors. And it was just like, it was so lovely. And so we got back after that hour and I was like, you know what? Nothing's happening. Like contractions aren't starting, like other than little cramps. I don't see a point in walking for 2 more hours.
Yeah.
Like we all know what direction this is heading. So at 11:30, they started the Pitocin again. And I think we were watching Parks and Rec this time.
Yeah.
And just hanging out. I like sat on the ball for like maybe an hour and a half, like obsessively making like figure eights and all the things that we do. And I also learned that I cannot answer the pain scale question at all.
Yeah.
Because my answer will always be 3, regardless of how much pain I'm in, because I don't know how to gauge this. It's impossible. And so I got tired of the ball and then I tried sitting in the bed and I hated it. And she's like, you can just stand and walk around if you want. So I was like, oh, I literally didn't consider that. And so I spent the rest of my labor standing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just have to like think about the clock. She told me that she marked me as in active labor at 2 o'clock. And at 2:30, I texted my best friend and I was like, this is no longer fun. This is not something I want to do anymore. I am ready for this to be over. Some variation of that, but it was like, this is not good anymore.
Yeah.
And they're like, you watch what they're doing. And she had started to set up the things for the baby.
Yeah.
And like all of that. And I was like, what is she doing? This is ridiculous. And she's like, okay, you might want to think about getting into a gown now. Cause I'm still just wearing my own clothes.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's fine. So we like got into clothes. And then like maybe at like 2:45. Yeah. She was like, yeah, sometimes emptying your bladder's a good thing to do. Like sometimes it's good. We're just going to get that bladder out of the way. So like, why don't you just try and have a pee? Sure. Go and have a pee and come back. And she's like they start to get a little hovery. And I'm just like, this is horrible. She's like, you need to try and keep your heels on the ground. I want you to try and breathe down instead of going up on your toes. And I'm like, these are impossible requests. I cannot in any way do that. And then just before 3, I said to her, I was like, I am trying so hard not to be tied to the timeline of our middle's birth But
Yeah.
it should be time for me to push soon. Like it just should be.
Yeah.
And you're not feeling anything. It doesn't feel like a bowling ball. It's like nothing. This is ridiculous. She's like, that's okay. It'll be fine. And then the next contraction, I just locked eyes with her and I was like, Brandy, it is time for me to have this baby. Okay, honey, then let's maybe take off. So I was wearing like a cool diaper.
Yeah.
Like, we'll just like take that off and hop up on the bed. And I hopped up on the bed and she's, yep, because you're 9.5 centimeters. Let me just call the doctor and you're going to wait one more contraction and then you can push. And so I did. And it was exactly 8 minutes of pushing again, like to a T. And I was so terrified that he was going to come out and I would not love him because I was not expecting to have a baby at all. Like, just wasn't expecting to have a baby. And like, he came out and it was like a living baby. And I was just like so shocked to see him. And he was only 7'10". So he just looked so small.
Yeah.
Compared to 8'15". Like, that's a big
Difference.
Yeah. So then the actual hardest part though was because we couldn't have the
Intenox. Yeah.
gas, they could not numb me because I could not stay still.
Yeah.
So eventually they had to take Clark away from me because I could not stop shaking. And the doctor was like, do you want an epidural for this? And I was like, I am not getting an epidural for stitches.
Yeah.
But I was like, I will not. I am not getting an epidural for stitches. Like, I can do this. I am going to win. But it just felt so mean. Like, you do all of this hard stuff and then it's hard should be over.
I know.
Oh, and it was the first time I was aware of delivering my placenta, which I was like super excited about because I really wanted to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was obviously perfectly healthy. So my blood sugar was unrelated to my placenta dying,
Mm-hmm.
but whatever. And they managed to stitch. So I only had 2nd-degree tearing, which is so much nicer than 3rd-degree tearing.
Yeah.
Substantially nicer. And all was well. And then the nurse, you just hear her say, she's, oh, what a lucky baby. And I was like, yes, he has great parents. And she's, no, check this out. And I will show you a picture after. But it was the coolest because I'd never seen it. And I'm sure you've seen it lots. But like, he had a true knot in his cord.
Oh, yeah.
And like, it was a very healthy, fat cord. And so the knot was like, honestly, like as big as my fist.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't like compressing the vessels because it was.
And a girl that I know, she had lost her son from a true knot in her cord. And it's one of those things. Like, I know like lots of people have true knots in their cords and they're completely fine. But like, when you know that it can go the other way, you feel like especially thankful. And so there had been that part of me that was like annoyed that I was induced for no reason. And then I was like, you know what? Who knows what would have happened in the next week? Right. You know what? Just super jazzed. He's here and completely. And then like when you've had multiple kids, like the nurses in like the postpartum, they just leave you alone.
Like, you just do your thing and get out of there as fast as you can.
And then he was he just kept being just under the threshold for the blood sugar checks. But then the doctor came and she was like, we are like, so I guess technically our hospital wants them to have 2 readings over 3 in a row.
Yeah.
But like the actual standard is like 2.6 or 2.7. But they're just, so she was like, we're conservative. He's fine. Like, just go. And so they came at exactly 24 hours to release us. She was like, 3:11 is your time. I will be here at 3. You will be released at 3:11. Like, it was awesome. Yeah. Get out of there.
Yay.
And then I had to bring him home. And then like our kids get to come and meet him and they just think he's so cool. Like, you've done that.
Oh, it's so
And yeah. And then they're just like, I like wanted diabetes.
yeah.
And I was just like super pumped that I made it through 3 inductions without C-sections. And C-sections are wonderful things when you need them. And I'm super glad that I didn't need them.
Yeah.
Because I just thought, do you know what I mean? Like, I think especially, I guess, in the world of type 1 diabetes, when they tell you like you're going to have big babies and you're going to be induced early. And
yeah, it's all the intervention. So there is a part of the pregnancy that is uncomplicated. And that was the birth. That's the best part.
I know.
Complicated.
I know. And then it's just, he's completely fine and wonderful. And the only problem is we can't go anywhere.
But do you feel like your family is complete?
Yes. I know without a doubt that I do not ever want to be pregnant again. Would I give birth again? Yes.
Yeah.
Would I have another newborn? Yes. Do I want to raise 4 children? No.
Yeah.
I joke that because I love the first 6 weeks of babies are like,
oh, no.
And I know there's people who don't love that part. Like, they find that really hard. And I was like, I should have a special she shed where mothers come and convalesce for 6 weeks, and I will care for their infant.
Yes.
And then once they're all healed, I will return to them their babies.
Well, haven't you heard of like the postpartum hotels in Australia?
No, but I think that I need to work there.
I think you need to look into that and open some here.
That's a thing, eh?
I don't know much about them. Alicia does. She knows a bit more, but it is a thing.
Because I think we get mailings that tell us when we get to retire, and I can retire in 20 years. And so maybe that is my retirement plan. A postpartum hotel.
Right?
I have some more doulas. They would be like on that.
Yeah. There you go.
Get out
I've planned with Catie
Well,
on your next little project. Because they're amazing at mothering, and then you can help others.
They can, and it's great right now because the W Network has their fantastic / horrible Christmas movie.
Oh, yeah.
And like my only job is to watch these movies and just like endlessly nurse and care for a newborn. Like it is heaven on earth for me.
Oh, I know. Thank you so much for sharing your stories.
Thank you for having me share them. It was really fun.
Oh, it was beautiful. And I really loved seeing your beautiful little guy there.
Oh, yes, Tara. I'll let you see his sweet little sleepy face.
Hi, are you back asleep, sweetheart? Oh my gosh.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Heaven.
Oh,
It is.
joy. Thank you so much
Thanks.
for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you on Instagram.
Yes. Oh, without a doubt.
Awesome. Bye, Catie.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out our website at www.shefoundhealth.ca and to sign up for our community for weekly bump blasts. Make sure to check us out on Instagram or Facebook at she.found.motherhood and head on over to your favorite podcast app and leave a review and a 5-star rating. If you enjoyed this podcast, take a pic of yourself listening to it and share it on social. Make sure to tag us on it so we know to keep making them.